Welcome back to Askewed Reviews. And just like I'm doing so throughout the entire year, I'm going through the entire Disney animated collection. And today I'm doing the 1948 film, Melody Time. Here's your trivia question for today. What famous live action animal appeared in this film? The answer will be at the end of this episode. The first segment in this film is Once Upon a Winter Time. In this story, a human couple, along with a bunch of different animal couples, including rabbits, birds, squirrels, and horses, go out to a frozen lake. The humans and rabbits are enjoying doing some ice skating when all of a sudden the ice starts cracking and falling apart. The female human and female rabbit start heading downriver and towards a waterfall. Unfortunately, the male human and male rabbit get incapacitated, so now it'll be up to the rest of the animals to save the two other women. The second segment is called Bumble Boogie, and this one is just a short segment about a bee that is done to a jazzy version of Flight of the Bumblebee. Next, we have the story of Johnny Appleseed. We watch as he starts as a young man living in a safe community, and then choosing to go out into the wilderness, planting trees and befriending animals. And eventually, after doing so much good work and becoming an old man, passing away peacefully. After that, we have the story of Little Toot. This is a story about a small tugboat that ends up causing a huge problem. Because of what he does, not only is he arrested, but ends up being banished from the harbor. But while being out on the open ocean, he runs into a ship that is in dire need of help and ends up redeeming himself. The next one is a short segment called Trees, and it's all about trees. The second to last one is Blame It on the Samba. This segment is all about feeling the music in your soul and brings back the partnership of Donald Duck and Jose Carioca, along with the Araquan bird. And the very last segment is Pecos Bill. This is a folktale story all about a young boy who's left out in the wilderness and is then raised by coyotes. Then one day, Bill befriends a horse named Widowmaker, and the two of them become best friends for life. Bill then grows up to become one of the most famous cowboys ever and is still best friends with Widowmaker, and nothing seems to be able to separate them, at least until Slewfoot Sue comes into town. And now Sue seems to dominate all of Bill's time. Melody Time is one of the many package films that was made during World War II, since a lot of the animators were not available, being the fact that they were in the war, so segment movies were just easier to make. So this next part doesn't really have anything to do with trivia, but the segment Once Upon a Winter Time has a special place in my heart, as when I grew up, I had a VHS called A Walt Disney Christmas, and it had different segments on it, and I would watch this almost religiously every December. So much so that I think at one point my copy just burnt out. In case you were curious, all the segments on that were Once Upon a Winter Time, Santa's Workshop, The Night Before Christmas, On Ice, Donald's Snow Fight, and Pluto's Christmas Tree. The Bumble Boogie was originally planned to be in Fantasia, but they ended up not putting it in, and it would eventually show up in this film. Dennis Day was the narrator for the Johnny Appleseed segment. If you didn't know this, the character of Johnny Appleseed is based off of a real person named John Chapman, a frontiersman credited with introducing the apple tree to areas of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. The Legend of Johnny Appleseed is one of the rare Disney animated works that actually features religious content, including the fact that Johnny has a Bible and is visited by an angel. The dance sequence from Johnny Appleseed is actually reused animation from the Martins and Coy's wedding dance from Make Mine Music. Little Toot is actually an adaptation of a children's story of the same name that actually ended up getting its own book series. Speaking of Little Toot, I only realized this while rewatching this film, but good God Almighty, the friggin' buoys that show up in this segment are absolutely terrifying. The haunting way that the Andrews sisters are singing during this segment definitely does not help. Speaking of the Andrews sisters, this would actually be the last film that they would be involved in. The Trees segment is based off of the famous poem of the same name written by Joyce Kilmer. This would be the third film that would partner up Donald and Jose Carioca after Saludos Amigos and The Three Caballeros. They also wouldn't appear together in another film until 1988 for Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Ethel Smith was the organist for the segment Blame It on the Samba. Roy Rogers was the narrator for the Pecos Bill segment. Also, Rogers was on loan from Republic Pictures to Walt Disney Productions. Disney actors Bobby Driscoll and Luana Patton both appear as themselves in this film. They also appear together in the movies Song of the South and So Dear to My Heart. The other gentleman rounding out the Pecos Spill live action cast was a band called Sons of the Pioneers. Other American folklore legends that are mentioned but not given their own segments in this film are Paul Bunyan, John Henry, and Davy Crockett. But both Bunyan and Henry would each get their own animated shorts, and Davy Crockett would appear in live action for Disney. Another folklore legend that was going to get their own segment in this was Casey Jones, but that didn't end up happening. Eventually, though, he would get his own short called The Brave Engineer. So, when it comes to the film Melody Time, this was a really fun, segmented movie. I enjoy almost all of the segments in it, and in general, the music. So, I think I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 5. Now it's time for the trivia question from the beginning of this episode. What famous live action animal appeared in this film? So that would be the most, if not one of the most famous horses in all of film and television, known as Trigger, who was normally companioned with Roy Rogers, but did appear in 88 movies and 100 television episodes. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews, and if there's a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments.